Philip Roche boarded a French merchant ship as a passenger. 2 weeks later, its French crew were gone, and Roche was sailing their vessel under a new name. More than 50 years earlier, Francois Olonnais had become so feared that even men who lived among pirates wrote about him like he was a monster. Both believed fear would protect them. It didn't. One ended at London's Execution Dock. His body hung in chains beside the Thames. The other met an ending so brutal that it sounds invented. These are the pirates who went too far and paid the price. At the beginning of November 1721, Philip Roche and 4 other men boarded a small French ship in Cork. They told Captain Peter Tartu they needed passage to Nantes. That was a lie. They chose his vessel because it was small, lightly crewed, and easy to steal. Roche looked nothing like the pirates from storybooks. No black flag, no dramatic coat, no pistol tucked between his teeth. He was an experienced sailor who knew the route between Ireland and France. He helped around the ship, spoke confidently about the sea, and slowly earned Tartu's trust. Soon, he was happy to leave Roche in charge while he and his mate slept below. That trust would kill him. On the night of the 15th of November, Roche sent 3 French sailors and a boy into the rigging to handle the topsail. The first 2 finished their work and started climbing down. Roche's men were waiting. They attacked each sailor as they reached the deck and threw them overboard. The man and the boy above saw what was happening and scrambled higher. One of Roche's gang climbed after them. He threw the boy from the rigging and forced the last sailor to scramble back down and into the hands of the waiting men. By now, the screams had woke the others. The remaining crew rushed onto the deck, confused and with no idea who they could trust. They didn't get time to work it out. Captain Tartu and his mate were tied back to back. Tartu reminded Roche that he had treated him with nothing but kindness and trust. He begged for a few minutes to pray. Roche refused, and both men were thrown into the sea. And when it was over, the men washed themselves, searched the ship, and sat in the captain's cabin, drinking his rum. And according to Roche's own confessions, they had never been merrier in their lives. And that little detail tells you everything you need to know about the men. They changed the ship's papers, removed the figure of St. Peter from the bow, replaced it with a lion, painted the stern red, and gave the vessel a new name, the Mary Snow. Then they began selling the cargo. Roche believed that the ship, its crew, and every trace of the crime had been eliminated. Then another passenger came on board. His name was Ainsley. During a dark, stormy night, Roche's men threw him into the sea and stole his goods. Ainsley stayed alive long enough to swim beside the ship, begging them to pull him back on board. He promised they could keep everything he owned. They left him in the water, but rumours were spreading. At Le Havre, Roche heard that people were actively searching for the vessel. He abandoned it and disappeared. He should have ran from London as far as possible. Instead, he travelled there under the false name of John Eustace and tried to claim money from an insurance deal. A letter to his wife exposed his real identity, and then a captain who knew Roche was brought in to face him. The lies collapsed. Roche confessed, and then he did what men like Roche often do when the rope is getting closer to his neck. He tried to save himself by selling out everyone else. He named accomplices, offered information. He promised to expose men who he said were even worse than he was. It changed nothing. Philip Roche was sent to Newgate prison to wait for execution dock. Roche had hidden his violence behind trust, false names and paperwork, while as François Olonnais wanted everyone to know what he was capable of. He arrived in the Caribbean as an indentured servant. Once his years of service were over, he joined the buccaneers, operating around Hispaniola and Tortuga, and by the 1600s, he had become one of the most feared French raiders in the Caribbean. Most pirates used violence to take money. Olonnais used it to build a reputation. He wanted the next town, the next ship, the next prisoner to know his name before he arrived. Most of what we know of his worst acts come from Alexandre Exquemelin, a former buccaneer who wrote the stories down not long afterwards. We cannot prove that every word written down happened exactly as he described it, but this is the story that made Olonnais infamous. During a campaign through Honduras, his men were ambushed by Spanish soldiers on the road to San Pedro. The pirates survived, but they needed another route through the jungle. Olonnais captured 2 Spanish prisoners and forced them to show him the way. They refused. According to Exquemelin, Olonnais drew his cutlass, cut open one prisoner's chest and tore out his heart, then bit into it. He turned towards the other prisoners and promised they would receive the same treatment unless somebody talked. Somebody did, and that was how Olonnais ruled. Not through loyalty, not through respect, through the terror of being next. Fear only works while you're the most dangerous person in the room. Not long after, Olonnais' ship ran aground off the coast of Central America. He and his remaining men moved inland, looking for food and a way out. Somewhere in Darien, an indigenous group captured him, and the report of what happened came back through one of the men who had escaped. According to Exquemelin, Olonnais was torn apart while still alive. His remains were burnt and his ashes thrown into the air, so nothing of him remained. Did it happen exactly like that? I guess we'll never really know, but Olonnais disappeared, and the story that survived was every bit as savage as the reputation he had built. He'd spent years making himself into a monster, and history gave him the death of one. More than 50 years later, on the 5th of August 1723, Philip Roche's cell door opened. His confessions had failed. His time was up. Roche was taken from Newgate towards Wapping. At the front of the Admiralty procession, a man carried a silver oar. The oar told everyone who claimed him. Roche had committed his crimes at sea. Now the Admiralty had come to collect. Execution Dock stood on the muddy edge of the Thames, between the high and low water mark. This was where the law of the land met the laws of the sea. Crowds watched from the riverbank and from boats on the Thames as Roche was brought beneath the gallows. The rope was placed around his neck. This was long before the British hangman began using the measured drop to break the neck instantly. There would be no clean snap. When the rope took his weight, Roche slowly strangled. The man who had ignored Captain Tartue's prayers now had plenty of time to consider his own. But death didn't end the punishment. By custom, the pirates executed at Wapping normally remained hanging until 3 tides had at least partially washed over them. The river rose, reached the bodies, dropped away, and came back again. 3 tides. After that came one final punishment. The Newgate Calendar records that Roche's body was hung in chains at Blackwall. That didn't mean hanging from a regular chain. His remains were held inside fitted ironwork called a gibbet, built to keep the body together while it was displayed. Bodies used for this kind of warning could be coated in tar or pitch to slow the decay before the iron bands were closed around them. Then Roche was raised beside the Thames at Blackwall, where ships travelling to and from London were bound to see him. The man who believed that the seas would hide his crimes had been turned into a landmark beside it. The wind moved the cage, the iron creaked, and every sailor passing along the river understood the message without anybody saying a word. This is what happens when you go too far. The golden age of piracy left us stories of treasure, black flags, and men living beyond the reach of the law. The reality was uglier. Philip Roche murdered men who trusted him. Francois and Olonnais made terror part of his identity. They lived in different decades. They died on opposite sides of the Atlantic, but they made the exact same mistake. Both believed that fear made them untouchable. It didn't. One was dragged through British justice and left hanging by the Thames. The other vanished into Darien, leaving a death story people still repeat over 300 years later. They wanted to be feared. Instead, they became warnings. 5 years before Roche reached Execution Dock, another pirate made his final standings off the coast of North Carolina. Blackbeard didn't die quietly, and what happened after the fighting stopped is even more disturbing. History remembers the legend. It usually leaves out the details. Click this video to see how Blackbeard really died. See you in the shadows.